Hey guys, and welcome to our Sunday school class number 2 from quarantine. This morning we are going to continue our story with Daniel, and I was going to have my dogs act out the parts. That was going to be Daniel, that's Bailey, my dog. And then here's Otto, my other dog, who is going to be King Nebuchadnezzar, because he's bigger. But you can't even see his name tag, he's very distraught right now. Anyway, I was going to have them wear costumes and everything, but that did not work. They were very unhappy with that. So we're just going to go along with the story, and you guys can just watch them randomly in the background if you like. Anyway, so this morning we were finishing up with Daniel, and this character we learned a lot about last week as far as courage is concerned. We learned that he was taken by the king of Babylon, whose name was really weird. Remember, it was King Nebuchadnezzar, played by Otto there. So King Nebuchadnezzar took Daniel to Babylon after they took over Jerusalem, and told Daniel he had to interpret some dream of his, and then Daniel did it, and basically told the King Nebuchadnezzar that his whole kingdom was not going to last, and that Jerusalem was going to come back, and come back fierce. So we learned that last week. This week we're going to finish looking at Daniel, and we are going to start with the reaction of King Nebuchadnezzar to this interpretation that Daniel told him. So King Nebuchadnezzar actually took the news really well, and he promoted Daniel after this interpretation to be basically the head dude of all of the wise men in Babylon. So he got a promotion, which is great. And then Daniel was actually able to hire on some of his own men. And so that is where we meet Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I don't have animals to play those roles. I only have 2 dogs. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are put in charge of the affairs of the province. So things that are happening in the province. So that's great. So what happens is that the king Nebuchadnezzar finds out that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are not worshiping the golden statue or the different gods that King Nebuchadnezzar worships. Big shocker, right? Because we know the character of Daniel, and so does King Nebuchadnezzar. And then King Nebuchadnezzar puts Daniel in charge, and then Daniel hires these guys. Shouldn't he have known that this was going to happen? Anyway, so that's where we are in the story. We are going to read Daniel chapter 3, 19 through 23. Daniel chapter 3, 19 through 23. And we're going to kind of break it down as we go through, because, again, it's a little confusing. And I was going to have my dogs act this out, but it's just not going to happen. So we're just going to read it. Sorry that's disappointing. But here we go. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was so filled with rage against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Again, this is after he found out that they're not worshiping the golden statue or the other gods. He was so filled with rage that his face was distorted. He ordered the furnace heated up 7 times more than was customary, and ordered some of the strongest guards in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to throw them into the furnace of blazing fire. So the men were bound, still wearing their tunics, their trousers, their hats, and their other garments, and they were thrown into the furnace of blazing fire. Because the king's command was urgent, and the furnace was so overheated, the raging flames killed the men who lifted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But the 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the furnace of blazing fire. Okay, so we've got this really crazy story right now of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego being punished by king with the weird name, King Nebuchadnezzar. And they're being thrown into this fire because they're not worshiping the other gods and worshiping the golden statue that the king wants them to. And even the guards that were throwing the men in were dying. And the 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, crazy names, are not dying, and they're fine. Crazy. So let's keep going just a little bit further. We're going to read 24 through 26. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up quickly. He said to his counselors, "Was it not 3 men that we threw bound into the fire?" They answered the king, "True, O king." King Nebuchadnezzar is crying in the background. They answered the king, "True, O king." He replied, "But I see 4 men unbound walking in the middle of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the 4th has the appearance of a god." Nebuchadnezzar then approached the door of the furnace, of blazing fire and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire. That was really fitting because King Nebuchadnezzar back there was just crying during that. He's very confused about what's going on. So here we have 4 men in the blazing fire in the furnace instead of just the 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, we don't know if this was supposed to be an angel or pre-incarnate Christ, or we're not exactly sure, but we do know that whoever this being was sent by God to protect Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And this was going to be our lesson anyway, despite all of this craziness with the quarantine and the coronavirus and all of that. But I actually find it really fitting because during this time right now, we need to remember that God is with us and walking through this fire, so to speak, this craziness with us, and walking through this struggle with us. And I think that that's really important to remember. Sorry for my dogs. They did not behave well with this experiment. We'll try again for the next one. Anyway, so for this lesson for today, it was short and sweet because I know that they're not lasting for very long. Just remember the character of Daniel and how awesome he is and how strong and courageous he is. And then he appoints Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they have the power of God behind them, and they have God who comes and protects them and sends a being to protect them. And this is a really cool story. The whole story of Daniel is really neat. So keep that in mind. We are going to continue exploring this in the next lesson. And we're going to add on to it. I might try to dress my dogs up again. I don't know, but we'll see. Please stay safe. Continue to log in, and I will hopefully see you guys soon. Thanks.